What's up, Steve?
Hey, Stephanie. How are you?
I'm doing good. Where are you in this, the weekly adventures of Steve?
What, the weekly adventures of Steve. I'm actually in Florida. I'm with my daughter, who a couple months ago, she had a little fender bender in a car. She's okay, but I've been coming back and forth to kind of help her and her husband and get settled in a new home. And so I want to give my thoughts and prayers out to Angela and her husband, Matt, and speedy recovery. But yeah, this is Kick Unhealthy Relationships to the Curb. That's Bethany McPhail. I'm Steve Vaccaro. And you're always in the same spot.
I am, because this is I like to know that everything's going to be working at the best of the abilities. Like, not that it's always perfect, because I find like at some point halfway through the show, my internet starts to get a little wacky, but I'm settled here. This is like my spot to do recordings.
Wow. Well, you do a great job. And, we have a special guest, I believe, is in Florida too. So this is pretty interesting how this all came about. But our show is on every Thursday at 8 o'clock. But we're going to make some changes. Starting next week, we're going to go live every Tuesday at 6 p.m. So we'll be back to live shows at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This kind of makes it easier for everybody involved, and we can get live feedback and kind of answer those questions that come along during our show, which we've been doing over 3 years. So what do you think about the change, Stephanie?
I like it because especially, I'm lucky enough to do this show, but I also do a show in my private Facebook group, Toxic Relationship Recovery Strategies for Professional Women, on Thursdays around the same time as this goes live. So it's kind of nice to have a little bit of that separation so people can tune in on Tuesdays and then Thursdays come to my group and tune in. I think it's really good.
Wow, not bad. See, I'm always trying to look out for you, Stephanie. That's what this is all about.
Good to hear.
Good to hear. That's right. We've been doing this for a long time, so I admire our friendship. I really love it, and I love the work that you share a little bit with the book that you have, and how can people get a hold of that book?
Sure. So my book, Being Loved Shouldn't Hurt, is all about my struggle of overcoming the cycle of toxic relationships, and realistically how you can too. And it also shares how other people also have been able to overcome it, and also some red flags and some green flags, what to look out for so that you don't get stuck. Because what seems to happen is that after somebody ends a toxic relationship, because they've given so much of their time, energy, and attention to that toxic relationship, they've lost themselves in the process. So what we really do is we come around and we give them the guidance, support, and tools they need to really discover who they are after this toxic relationship so they can build better than ever before. And I think, actually our guest Bethany is going to be a great addition to what we're talking about here, because trauma can really negatively affect people, and it can feel really hard and impossible to make changes. So it's really important for us to be able to talk about healing, the possibility of it, and see other people that are further in their healing journey than others so they can be inspired to do it as well. So for those of you who don't know Steve is actually a psychotherapist. And so it's a shame. It looks like we might have lost him, but it's really great to be able to have, I think, someone as a therapist to be able to share what they've learned and what their experience in helping their clients heal from trauma. Steve does a great job. He does a lot of volunteer work with domestic violence and all that kind of stuff. And then, of course, myself, what I do with groups and one-on-one. And then our guest, Bethany, we can go ahead and bring her on as Steve gets his Wi-Fi. And I really recommend to my clients, so I'm really excited to be able to interview Bethany today. Bethany Dotson is a trauma-informed yoga therapist and relationship over a decade. Or confidence after divorce or toxic relationships. Communicate better, navigate conflict, and most importantly, co-create healthy relationships. He's a domestic violence survivor and thriver who helps women triumph over trauma, break their cycle of emotionally unavailable partners, and attract the love they deeply desire. So, welcome, Bethany. I am excited for us to have a conversation. I think that this is going to be really great, especially, it's great to get different perspectives, as a fellow survivor and to share. I think it's really important for people to hear these stories and to be able to get inspired by overcoming. So feel free to share with us what got you so excited to share your knowledge with other people.
So it was kind of by accident, honestly. When I started a private practice 10 years ago, I kept attracting women and men at the same time. Yeah, I kind of fell into this by accident 10 years ago. I trained to be a yoga therapist because 25 years ago, I started practicing yoga to help me overcome anxiety and panic attacks and depression. And I wanted to make a bigger difference. And I started attracting a lot of women and men who struggled whether to leave their marriage, struggled in dating, struggled to, have healthy relationships. And I was also struggling in a toxic relationship myself at the time that I started my private practice, and was struggling whether to leave, kept going back. And I'd also grown up witnessing domestic violence and had repeatedly attracted emotionally unavailable men where I felt like I got addicted to trying to make it work and losing my goals, my ambition, direction in my career, all of that stuff. So after kind of repeatedly attracting people like that, I wasn't advertising that. I was like, maybe I should just focus on this specifically. So I did some more training, became trauma informed, and here we are. And this is it's what I love to do.
That's wonderful. And that's one of the things too, is to be able to, we love hearing from our guests about how they were finally able to overcome it themselves. I mean, I think that's really the beauty of it, is anyone can get stuck in these types of relationships. It's not like it just happens to a fill in the blank person. It can happen to anyone. And a lot of times it's you least expect it. And like you, I was like really terrible or really good or terrible, you decide, at finding really awful people and trying to make it work. And, and you're right, you get sucked into this pattern because it's all you know. So until you break that pattern, you're going to keep repeating the same things. What did you find was one of the, really the catalyst for you yourself to start making changes?
So the catalyst for me was leaving. The abuse in my last relationship had to get really, really bad. I find that most people, it has to get that bad before, it was really bad, and to the point that I was afraid for my own life, unfortunately. And that was ultimately the catalyst. I mean, I literally moved 1,800 miles away to Florida to get complete. That's what it took for me. And I got coaching. I got trauma-informed help for myself. And I just really started doing the work, focused on my business, eventually started dating again, started pulling in the same type of people, had to make some very uncomfortable choices, had to emotionally regulate myself. I mean, I don't like to identify personally with being a trauma victim, but I feel like healing is an evolving process and it's never finished, right? We're always going to encounter a new challenge or be triggered. So for me, the catalyst was the abuse had to get really bad in my own relationship. And it wasn't, we didn't look like a toxic relationship on the outside. We were posting smiling pictures on social media and we were traveling all over the place, and it didn't look like a domestic violence relationship. But yeah, it had to get glaringly bad for me in order to leave.
I apologize for the technical problems. And Bethany, I'm listening to your story. when you were in these relationships, when it happened again, did it affect your mood, your self-esteem and confidence, or did you think that I should have learned from the last relationship?
I think it impacted initially my mood and my emotional home so much. I was too busy just trying to get through the day. I was too consumed just trying to survive the day without thinking about him and without crying or without, like, I was just numb. I would say for like the first 6 to 9 months, I was basically just like, "Mm." And there were times where I, internally beat myself up, but for me, my coping was like just being emotionally numb, really disassociating. And I think I learned that from, the first 10 years of my life. I was living with my grandparents in domestic violence shelters. Like, we were constantly going back and forth between, my mom was leaving my dad again. So I think I just learned how to really emotionally distract myself, which is what I did when I ignored thousands of red flags. I just was like, oh, that doesn't feel good. Oh, I'm not going to look at that. So, and it was like an automatic unconscious habit for me to do that. So
You again, Steve.
I'm sorry, I work in domestic violence shelters in the New York area, and one of the common themes of these women is that they become immobilized and fearful, and they feel that they can't move to the next step. I mean, you were immobilized at one point, but you pivoted. What advice would you give to women or men that are in that cycle?
work with an expert, work with a coach, work with a therapist, work with somebody who is trauma trained, who is not going to allow you to stay stuck in your story, and who is going to give you a strategy, the right kind of support for you. That's how I got to be where I am today. I mean, yeah, I realized I couldn't take the next step or get to the next step without help. And prior to, what I want to kind of highlight is that prior to my last abusive relationship, I'd had 10 years of talk therapy. I had like so much therapy, and it still wasn't enough to really help me make these pivotal decisions in a relationship in the face of a manipulative personality. I still red flags right away. Oh, well, whatever. Like, I still went back to my addiction, my addictive behavior, my codependency. So I would say what really helped me get off of that train and over here is working with people that were confident enough to call me out on my crap and, keep it real with me and keep me accountable. And I had to make really uncomfortable decisions in my own dating and personal life and, in my business to be where I am today. So if I can do that, anybody can do that, you just have to take ownership and just take the next step, get the right help. I feel like, and I was this way for a little while. I can fix it myself. I know I can do it myself. And this is kind of a thing with trauma survivors. It doesn't feel safe to let somebody all the way in. And that can be including a therapist or a coach. They can be really like hyper independent. And I've certainly been that way, and I still am to a certain degree. So I would just say work with somebody.
That's one of I think the hardest things is to, for us to admit that we can't do it by ourselves. And, and this is something that actually Steve and I have talked about this before. I mean, Steve is a therapist and myself as a coach. When people come to us, a lot of times they've done the years of therapy and it hasn't been helpful. They haven't gotten to where they want to go. But I think with therapists, and you tell me, Steve, but I think with therapy, there's a lot more of, like we're learning our triggers, we're figuring out what's going wrong. Like, how did this happen to me? Let's look at my childhood stuff. And that's all super important. I mean, it's definitely what it is. But I think that with, like, for me, when we coach people, it's helping them get to a specific goal. So we're guiding, we're guiding more, we're giving specific steps, because I didn't know how to create healthy relationships, which is why I kept creating bad ones, because that's what I knew. So I felt like if you don't get the tools, then how is anyone expecting us to create something different? We're going to automatically default to what we know. And so, Steve, what is something like, do you find ever like yourself get frustrated that, and you're on mute again, just so you know, but do you ever feel yourself get frustrated that you might have someone who seems stuck and doesn't seem to be moving forward as quickly as you think they might?
No doubt. And the challenge is, as a therapist, you want to go in and say, no, do it this way, and this way. And if you do, you're not empowering the individual. And so you have to kind of sit back, kind of figure out and learn, have them talk and voice out where they've been, where they're going through, and where they want to go. But the past, predicts the future. So you have to kind of, sometimes it's against the grain to do it that way, but you have to kind of take it in. But then I'm a more behavioralist too, so I want to support them after they come to that conclusion and to move from that. But the specifics of things, because they have to have a plan afterwards, what that plan is. And I know, Stephanie, you've talked about that with the people that you work with. And I'm sure, Bethany, is it important for you to develop a plan for each client that you work with?
So, yeah, I don't develop a personalized plan for each client I work with. I have a structure and a plan that it's like a roadmap that I have clients in my group program follow, that I found has been successful with multiple private clients in the past. So, but the bigger overarching theme is that I always give people, this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it, this is going to help you achieve X, Y, and Z. So they have that structure. And I feel that's really important because, especially when you're just leaving something like this and you're in the numbness recovery phase, you're kind of flailing, and it can be really reassuring and confidence building to have something to turn to every single day that's part of your plan, your recovery protocol, so that you're not turning to numbing habits or researching your ex again or looking up his new supply or things like that. So plan, yes, absolutely.
I tend to find that what a lot of people, especially, when you work with professional women, we're really used to figuring things out. So we're researchers and all that. I find it sometimes where, because I did this too, but it's easy kind of to not pay as much attention to what we need to focus on, because it basically just like, do you notice also that what I find is because these professional women are so good at researching, they take some of the work on themselves by putting a lot of energy on focusing on narcissism and, researching a whole bunch of different stuff instead of.
Yeah, I think I understand what you're saying. Yeah, spending a lot of time on focusing on the other person's behavior and researching that and spending a lot of, so I found, and I did this for sure, and it didn't get me anywhere, but I find that it just fuels, really, it's just like a replacement for the addiction to chaos. I think that researching can be helpful initially, but once your eyes are open to what you're actually in and you realize that it is abusive and it's just not you being crazy, you have to start turning the mirror towards yourself and looking at, okay, what is it within me? And nobody really likes doing that because it's uncomfortable. It's a lot easier to blame the downfall of 4 failed marriages on the fact that you married 4 alcoholics, and not look at why you did that. Why did you choose to ignore 7 years worth of red flags?
Mm-hmm.
What is it within you? And that's a really uncomfortable place to be in, but we don't get change or transformation unless we're really willing to be honest and take an honest, compassionate look at what am I doing? Why am I doing this to myself? The moment that you step out of why does this keep happening to me? Why did he do this to me? Why did he cheat? Why did he ruin my life? And start honestly asking yourself, why am I choosing to stay in this? I had a therapist, and it pissed me off because all I wanted to do was talk about my ex. And she was like so done with it. And she was like, this has nothing to do with your ex. This is everything to do with you. You're the issue. And she literally said that. But it was the moment that I needed. It was the slap in the face that I needed to go, whoa, I don't like that, but I think you're right. So, yeah, you have to look at yourself. Steve,
You got to unmute, Steve.
Yeah, I think that therapist was wise, Bethany, because sometimes if the individual can't come to a realization what's occurring, you have to kind of confront that. And it seems like that's what that therapist did. It seems like that's what the work you do now is to kind of confront or to enlighten those clients that you're working with.
Yeah. And I would say the majority of the clients that I work with already realize that they're the problem. They've already come to that conclusion. They just don't know how to stop being the problem. They don't know how all the things that they've tried haven't worked. And they don't know how to get from point A to point B.
Kick unhealthy relationships to the curb. That's Stephanie McPhail and Steve Vaccaro. We have our expert guest, Bethany Dotson. And Bethany, what's the most challenging aspect of the work that you do and the most rewarding aspect?
Great question. The most challenging aspect for me has been honestly allowing clients to be where they are and not want their results more than they do, or not want something for them more than they're really ready to receive. So sometimes I can get caught up in this would be so great, like wanting it in a way more than they do, and feeling in some way like I failed them in a coach if they're not getting the full results. And I have to step back and realize, like, coaching, like any relationship, is a relationship, and it takes two people participating fully to get the results. So the most rewarding aspect, hands down, is when somebody starts working with me in our enrollment conversation and they're completely at rock bottom and they're stuck and they don't, and like 3 months later, their kids are doing better in school. They've gotten a better job. I've had people get upwards of $75,000 in a promotion or sign-on bonuses, and or they've healed their anxiety attacks. I've had people heal autoimmune issues because they're reprogramming their nervous system. They're no longer living in fight or flight. When people email me and they send me a picture of their fiance and they're like, oh my gosh, look what happened. Like that I will do whatever it takes to have more client wins and client results. So that's the most rewarding, when somebody makes significant changes and they're like, oh my gosh, this changed my life. I'll do that all day. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And I mean, and that's what it is. That's what's so rewarding for all the work that we do, is to see that those are the good stories, those times it might be difficult, but you get that and you're like, yes, this is awesome, because it's a whole new life for them. It's completely changing the trajectory.
Yeah.
And for you, Bethany, it kind of, when those occur, it kind of puts the past, it kind of puts a little bit different meaning of it, because you experienced it and then you were able to pivot and use it professionally to help other people. And it doesn't get better than that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we can all transform our pain and use that trauma. There's always gifts in anything, we just have to look for it. We have to have the dedication and the commitment and the discipline to go after what we want, right? And turn that into, a lot of times I think my ex was the greatest thing that ever happened to me, because if I hadn't met him, if I hadn't spent those years with him, I wouldn't probably be here today. I wouldn't have gone through all the crap and the turmoil that was needed for me to finally say, okay, I'm completely done. I'm healing myself completely this time, and I'm going to make a success out of my life. So,
God bless your efforts there. We're just about out of time, Bethany. How can people contact you or watch your podcast?
Yeah, so you can find me at bethanydotson.com, and do have a podcast. I also have a free masterclass, Break the Cycle. It's 45 minutes, and it covers the 5 steps, the 5 shifts that I give my own clients to help them heal decades worth of codependency and trauma-based behaviors, and help them have healthy relationships, starting with the one with themselves. So yeah, there it is, the masterclass.
Awesome.
Thank you so very much for joining us here tonight, and we look forward to working with you and in the future, and keep up the amazing work that you're doing for us.
Thank you so much. It was an honor to be here today. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Bethany. I appreciate it. Sorry for all the technical stuff, but for those of you who are listening and watching this later on, thank you everybody for tuning in and hanging out with us today. It's always great to have somebody else who is also working on helping other people with the pain that they experience and using that for positivity. So thank you, Bethany, for all the work that you do. Thank you, Steve, for tuning in with us all the way in Florida. You guys are like right neighbors right now. And we'll see all of you next week. Have a great week, everybody. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.